Hello and welcome. Welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Armbruster. I'm the Director of Data Career at the AI Guild, and I have today with me Itai Bar-Sinai, who is a co-founder of Monolabs and also its Chief Product Officer. Hello, Itai.
Hey, Chris. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we always like to start by actually asking people how they got into data. So this is a broadcast that is about the upcoming Data Lift Summit in Berlin in June. You're going to be there. You're going to be delivering a keynote, but we would like to go back to the origins and say, so how did you get into data?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm actually super excited about coming to Berlin for Data Lift. I'm really hoping that there won't be like some new strain of COVID or something like that that's gonna ruin everything for everyone. So I started my career around at Google, just like right after university. I was a software engineer doing mainly big data, right? On a product of Google's called Google Trends. Are you familiar with Trends, Chris?
I've seen it before, but actually I don't really know much about it. So what does it do for us?
Yeah, so I really recommend everyone who's doing data science or analytics or anything to do with statistics, or anyone who's just interested in what people are searching for on Google, to use that. It's publicly open to everyone. It's an analytics product that kind of lets you see what people are thinking about in the world as it appears on Google's data, right? According to searches, YouTube views, Google Books, etc., right? All the sources that Google has. And so I spent like 4 years on that team, doing a lot of big data, getting a lot of models into production, maintaining them in production. And I think around the age of 29, I kind of felt that I'm in the corporate world, and I'm developing a career that I want to see like what other things the world has to offer. So I left and actually took a short hiatus from the tech world. I've traveled around a lot, and I also been to Berlin for a while. I spent like a bit over a year over there and opened a restaurant over there. So I know there's a lot of crowd from Berlin here in for AI Guild. So if anyone's familiar with Leah's Kitchen, I was one of the co-founders of that restaurant. Not there anymore. I went back to Israel after Berlin, came back to the tech world pretty shortly after that. And I did a lot of consultancy work, building AI for early stage startups, actually like really building those stuff from scratch. Also consultancy work for kind of AI, an AI focused VC, to learn more about the business world and the startup world from those perspectives. After you spend your first half of your career at Google, usually you don't get a lot of understanding of how the startup works.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're doing a very specific job at Google that works with startups, as a software engineer or as an engineer at Google, you come out and your familiarity with how things work for very small companies, early stage companies, isn't that great. So I had to do a lot of this kind of work, and then actually I met with who was my boss back at Google, Nemo. He was the global engineering lead of Google Trends, and we both realized that we're looking for the next big thing. So we teamed up and brought our third co-founder, who was a good friend of Nemo's. His name is Yotam. And this was around 3 years ago. We joined forces and started Mona, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot. So maybe I'll pause here.
Okay. So yes, I'm going to go back to Google for a minute, and then we go on to Mona. So I wanted to go back to Google because obviously, I work with people on their data career on professional development, and I have noticed that every now and again, people do dream. I want to work for one of the US giants, for the obvious reasons, because they're considered the most advanced when it comes to data and machine learning. So I was wondering, I know that you spent a significant numbers of years there, I think 4 altogether. What is it like working inside, and, would it match people's expectations? Would you do it again?
Well, yeah, I mean, so first of all, I left Google. Like there's been some years since then, right?
Mm,
I'm
sure.
not counting anymore, but probably around like 6 years ago, right? So whatever I'm gonna say is about my experience back then, right? I don't know if it's the same, but for me it was a great experience, right?
Okay.
I First of all, I think like the culture that was there was like really fitted me very well. I think it was a great place to learn. I always had a feeling that everyone around me is really smarter than I am, and I can learn from everyone. Really, really great people all around. The team was amazing, and I actually had like the privilege to be in a team that is not like Trends. It was our own product, right? So we were a somewhat small, like a pretty small team in Google sizes, right? And that is building a specific product. So we had to kind of consider ourselves like a small startup within Google. We didn't have to be like to like work exactly in the specific way that if you're
Hmm.
working on, for example, Google search, you have to do everything to kind of fit the little thing that you're building, which might be big, but it's little when compared to the entire like engine of search. You have to fit that exactly in the right place and work in exactly the specific way. So for us, like for me, it was a really great privilege to be able to work across the board, like everything from front end engineering all the way to the back of the back end, right? And the models that we worked on. I would I do it again? Yeah, for sure. I think I think it all depends on what you're looking for in life right now. There's a certain type of excitement that you get from the startup world, from working in a small early stage company where like every it's like a roller coaster every day. Like things can change drastically.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and you don't get that at Google. But you get something else, right? I don't know if that like you get stability and you get like really smart people around you, and you get um, the ability to work on things that are really really great. Like I can give you maybe one cool example story. Like
Okay.
we built one of the things I built over there on Trends was a tool that took input from Google News and from Google searches and tried to provide journalists with a good idea on whether what they are writing stories about is still trending. Like, are people still searching for this? Are people still thinking about this? Compared to how many stories are being written about this in the news. And I actually had the chance to get to New York and visit the CNN newsroom over there and actually watch like and it's a big newsroom. It's like a whole floor, right, in a big building in the middle of Manhattan. And I had the chance to actually like go over there and visit the newsroom and see the tool that I built on the big screen, right, being used. And this is something that if you're very very lucky, you get that in the startup world as well. But if you work for a company like Google, then you get those kind of things, right? So that was pretty amazing, yeah.
Thank you, Itai. So let's build a bridge. You mentioned that you also met one of your co-founders at Google. He was the engineering lead. So, what is Monolabs about, and does your experience from Google actually feed into this?
Yeah. So mine and Nemo's our CTO, my co-founder, actually one of the things that happened to us when we were working at Google, um, and people can look this up. There was like a really cool tool that was based on Google Trends data called Google Flu Trends. Which is actually pretty timely now in COVID times. It used to predict where the flu is going to go according to searches, right? Like according to what people are searching for, if they're searching
Mm,
for the right
yes.
symptoms, etc. And it actually it was one of the first, like it was considered like a flagship machine learning project. It was very early on. Like we're talking like a project that started 2008 or 9, I think, before I came to Google, right? And and it worked really well. And I think I don't want to commit to, to too many things over here, but I think the CDC used to use it as well to like send vaccinations to the right places. And in and around 2012, some like people realized that it's actually not like it actually kind of started failing and not predicting very well, and there was like a big kind of this was a PR fluke, right? And if you search on Google News today, Google flu trends, you might see headlines like, "What can we learn from the huge failure of Google flu trends?" Right? And we realized that there was this big gap in how much visibility we have on the application performance level and the infrastructure levels. Right? We had a retraining pipeline. It worked every day. Everything was fine with error rates. Everything was fine with latencies, right? But we actually realized we had no idea about the actual functionality on the algorithmic aspects, the data aspects of the models. Are they performing well? Is it time to reconsider some of the decisions that were made? Do we need to call back like the researchers? Like, and obviously when we call this basically we had monitoring by customer complaint, and in this case monitoring by PR mishap, and this was kind of like the first flag that kind of popped into our mind even back then, although it took us quite a lot of years until we got to Mona from there, that there's this gap in monitoring over here, which is exactly the kind of gap that we're trying to close with Mona.
Okay, so let's talk about what the gap and how Mona is closing it.
Right. So I think maybe excuse me, the kind of the first kind of realization that we came to is that traditionally, right, data science was and maybe still is or has been, right, it's a research-oriented function, right, within the organization, within our organizations, and this research-oriented function, its end product is a model, right, or at least used to be, and we are now in a point in time where those things are changing. But this is traditionally this was the thing, right? You had like some kind of business problem that you're trying to solve with data, and you're thinking, okay, what data I need to collect, and then what kind of technology, what kind of algorithm I want to use to design a model and to build a model to predict something. And once you have a model and you tested it on your test set and it looks good over there, this used to be like, okay, I did a good job. Now I'm kind of throwing this to those people in production, wherever they are, and that's it. I'm going to work on the new, on maybe on even more improving this even more, but maybe on a new model. Maybe like the research part was kind of over, and then maybe something happened, right? And like I said, like monitoring by customer complaints, right? Like someone like woke like called you in the middle of the night that everything's actually not working as planned. Maybe a year later, maybe a couple of months later, and you realize, okay, I need to regroup and take this back to research. And this ping pong, like it really felt like there's a wall, right, or a gap, right, between this research oriented function called data science and the product and business people, right, which are on the other side. So I think this is like the first gap that we kind of realize and that needs to be bridged. This like those two sides of the world need to somehow be connected.
Okay, let's talk more about this. So, I mean, I introduced you as the co-founder of Monolabs, but you're obviously also the chief product officer. Something while I was listening to you that came to my mind was a quip, so to speak. You know, AI is not a project; it's a product. What does that mean, right? So this research-oriented side, where you kind of do something and you do kind of like in a project-oriented mode, project management, and you complete. However, if it is a product, it needs to work always 24/7. Yeah, there are certain kinds of things
depending on the product, but yes,
depending on the product. But and actually, you don't want to do monitoring by customer complaint, because if it's a product, it means you won't have any customers at the end of the day. So there are things that you need to do. So tell us a bit more about how does Monolabs help companies productionize AI and make this thing better?
Right. So sure. maybe even before that, like just like to take you through the like the how this gap culturally first kind of starts to get close, is that um, and this relates to it's true. I'm the chief product officer at Mona, and I work a lot on designing our product, thinking what should be the next features. But in order to do that, we kind of decided that I also work very, very closely with our customers, right? So I do. I'm also the chief customer officer, right? So whenever we meet with a data practitioner who can be a Mona user, from that day of let's say the technical sales pitch, all the way to a customer that is using Mona on a daily basis. I'm like, it's my organization that works with them, and this came from the understanding that there's a company at our stage, product should be as close to the user as possible to make sure that we understand what they need, especially when we're working on something that's relatively new, right? There was never like a solution for something like this before, and so one thing that we realized very early on is that the companies that we are able to work with in the beginning are companies which already had this shift in perspective about what their machine learning models are, right? And the data science team, like the head of data science or head of machine learning or head of AI, it could be several titles. They would be forward-thinking people who consider themselves not research owners but product owners. And research is there to serve the product.
Okay.
And once you have this state of mind, you start thinking, okay, what is it that I need to know in order for me to test my models in the real world? To realize, okay, the test is not the test set. It's actually how the models behave in the real world, in production,
Okay.
for our customers. So Mona actually came to enable this way of thinking and basically allow you to say, okay, what is it that I need to know? What data I need to gather in order to in order to know this, and when do I want to get alerted? Where do I where do I want to look? And how do I want to understand like what's the next step, and whether our models are working in the right way, again, in the real world. So I'm debating if you want me to go in deeper on what Mona is doing, or
Yes, I so actually I'm going to build a bridge to what you're going to deliver in Berlin on the 23rd of June, because the title of your keynote is Taking AI from Good to Great by Understanding It in the Real World.
Yeah.
And you just introduced the real world in the context of having a product that has customers. They can be external, internal customers, but yeah, they're using the product.
Yeah.
Real world. What is not a real world? So why are you emphasizing real world?
Yeah, so I think the emphasis over here is mainly to differentiate it or to contrast it from the research place, right? From those lists, this fenced sandbox,
Okay.
this fenced
Okay.
like walled garden, in which maybe in the beginning you want to work over there, but after that you want to really kind of understand, okay, I built this model. This model is now part of a larger AI system. And it operates as let's say the heart or the brains of a product in the real world. It serves real people, real business in some way. How does this work over there? And this is really like maybe the first main challenge that we encountered when trying to when working with our customers, that you want to try to you need to get data that isn't just about your model. It's not even just like inputs and outputs of your model that are flowing through the system, even like in production. You need to monitor the model in the context of its business function, right? So if you have a fraud detection model, you need to somehow maybe later on create some feedback loop, right? When you marked something as non-fraudulent and it ended up being fraudulent, you want to know this, right? And you want to somehow know if this happens a lot, right, or not. And this can become pretty difficult, because usually those data points actually exist in different places. they exist in different time points, right? Because you are now saying, I think this is not fraudulent, but only in a week from now, maybe you will know that you made a mistake, right? So you need to somehow have the ability to continuously update your monitoring system to say, okay, this is, I now know more information about this. Sometimes it's not that easy to say, okay, whether or not you were right? So in a fraud system, maybe it's easier, but how about if you're recommending an ad, right, or a product to someone? They might click it, they might not click it, right? If they didn't click it, does that mean that you recommended the wrong product? If they did click it, maybe there was still another thing that you could recommended in the recommendation engine that would have been better. It's kind of hard to tell. If they click it and then there was a conversion, right? There might be many different ways to measure the performance of your model in production in the context of its business, and you need to have a way to account for all those different ways and to track all this data across time. So I think this is like the first part that needs to be understood of that real world, right? Like your model is actually serving a business function. It's not just a research project. Is this function being actually served, right?
Yes, exactly. So we're talking about monitoring performance, and I wanted to zoom in on another word that we have there, good to great. So in the context of customer satisfaction, customer retention, and a few other things, one can precisely imagine that great actually is what you want, because good enough is probably not going to have happy customers, business growth, and so on and so on. So what does that word great there mean for you? What does that look like?
Right. So first of all, I want to just say, sometimes you want to say that great is like the enemy of good, right? Like if good is good enough, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But in many cases, like the title over here alludes to the capability that you might have to extend your research capabilities into production and actually enhance what you know in research. And maybe I'll use an example over here that'll make it easier to understand. So imagine you are trying to build a language detection mechanism, let's say for audio files, right? A language detector. And let's say this is a highly obfuscated example. I'm taking a real example and obfuscating it with
Okay.
to preserve privacy. So let's say you want to detect French conversation, like whether or not the conversation was in French. Then you get a training set, right? You start collecting data. You're labeling maybe you get like a bank of audio conversations, and you label that data French, not French, French, not French, and then you train your model according to the label data that you did, and you launch that model into production. You get good, nice performance metrics on your test set. You put this in production. Now, let's say you have a good monitoring system and you are able to get alerted when some of your customers are getting, let's say, very low confidence scores for when you're detecting French, right? You have some classifier, it tries to detect several languages. You have some confidence score for each language, and you basically you can realize that when your model detects French for specific customers, then it's with very low confidence. And then in production, you might have data that you didn't have in the training set, and there was no way for you to get in the training set. So for example, might have geographical data in production because they're using the conversations that you are now tagging, they're using your system, and you know where the conversation originated from. So with a good monitoring system, you can check that out and realize, oh, I now see, and you can actually automatically get alerted on this, that from a specific region in France, there I'm getting really low confidence scores, right? My model is kind of unsure about French that it detects over there. And then you can say, okay, this is very focused already. And you realize, right, you can listen to the conversations and realize, okay, my training set was biased in a way that I was unaware of and had no way to be aware of, no matter how much research I would have done on this. I just didn't have the geographical information on the calls I had in the training set, but I do have that in production. Now I can realize where am I biased really. And so I had a good model, right? I put it in production. Now I can actually find out where my blind spots are and make it great in that sense. Make sense?
Okay. Yes. So in a very fundamental sense, you're saying that this is a continuous process, and that by going to the real world, actually perhaps even as fast as possible, you keep improving your models and you reach your customers better because you learn and you keep learning from what happens.
Yeah, and maybe to add to that, also maybe with another example, because this example was still pretty research oriented, right?
Mm-hmm.
You extend your research with new data, right? Geographical information in this case from production, but the understanding of your model being a part of a product that the real test is whether or not this product succeeds and the model serves the product correctly or not, can actually lead you to look for problems in different places that if you were just research oriented, you wouldn't have looked for, because you said, okay, this is out of scope for me. So let me give you another example, another obfuscated one. Let's say that Google decides to release a new version of Google Chrome. And in this new version, they are changing some, they're changing how the API by which you can read cookie data. And let's say some of the features, let's say we're talking about, again, a fraud detection model in this case, right? Fraud detection system. And some of the features that you're using, you are utilizing data that is extracted by cookies, from cookies. Now, this change in the API might break some of your features, and they could be broken in many different ways. It might receive many nulls now for you if you're lucky, and they might receive bullshit numbers, right? And a research-oriented data scientist might have said for something like this, okay, this is a data engineer's job, right? This is like there should be aware that there's an API change, and my job would be, given like that I get the actual data that I'm expecting, that the model will provide good results. But then in the real world, and the business people, the product people, they won't care if you tell them, hey, I just got like those bullshit numbers, right? They would say, oh, actually, this machine learning solution that I have over here that's based on machine learning is just not doing the job for me because it's so flaky, because this little change has changed everything. And so the shift in the state of mind is say, okay, I actually do really care about this, and I need to know if some of my features start behaving in a weird way, and I need to know this very soon, right? I don't want to know this. I don't just want to track like my features across all of the data and learn when the distribution changes significantly, because this might be too late, right? My customers will already be suffering. My business KPIs will already be suffering. You want to know this when this happens. Let's say when this new Google Chrome version is just a beta version that is used by, let's say, 0.1% of your data, right? Then you want to get alerted, not when it's 30% of your data. So it's very, very important that you have a way to know this when it just starts out, so you can get alerted. Maybe then you call a data engineer and you say, hey, what happened here, right? And maybe you need to do some more exploration, but this is still part of your ownership of the product here.
Itai, thank you very much for that. Our half hour is actually up for today.
This went quickly.
Yes, that's good to know that it went quickly for you. I also think that for our audience, this went very quick. So actually, to our audience, if you want to hear and see more of Itai, you have a chance by coming to Berlin from the 22nd to the 24th of June this summer, because Itai will be delivering a keynote. He will also be around, so there's room for informal conversations at the Data Lift Summit, and all that can happen for you. You can find out more about him, about Monolabs, and about how to productionize ML solutions more successfully and go from good to great. So, Itai, thank you very much for being here. I'm going to shift us into outro mode.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.